The Great Central Railway is the UK's only double-track mainline heritage railway. It's the only heritage line where full-size steam engines can be seen passing each other at speed, just as it was when steam ruled the rails. Join the Hornby magazine team as they embark on building a brand new 00 gauge layout. Come with us as we visit the railway and explore new techniques in this all-new series. Building the Great Central Railway.
So hello and welcome back to the Hornby magazine workshop and to the Great Central Railway themed 00 gauge model railway. Now, over the last few videos we've done here on Key Model World, we've been showing you the progress around the layout as we've built Swithland sidings and Quorn Magna Station as well. And we've now come to the final section to build, and that, as you may have guessed, is the panel right next to me here. So the aim of this scene, as you may have guessed as well, is actually this is going to have a bridge scene, and the inspiration is Swithland Reservoir. Now obviously this is on a curve, and anyone who's been to the Swithland Reservoir section of the Great Central Railway will know that actually it's pretty much a straight line through there. So this is very much a modeller's licence take on that scene to fill this corner between what I'm calling Rabbit Bridge just behind me and Swithland sidings just to the left here of me. So whilst we've been away, we've had our wonderful scratch builder Paul Chapman working on a project for us, and that is to build a model replica of the reservoir bridge for us to fit around the curve as well. And very cleverly, he's done that from a template that we supplied to him, and that bridge is now here, and we're ready to get installing it into the layout today. So the first job we've got to do actually is to weather the track. I realised this morning we've never actually weathered the track, so I'm going to be taking away all the rolling stock, getting some careful masking out, and then weathering all the track down as a first step. Once we've done that, it's going to be a case of taking out this bridge deck, which the 8F and the cement train is currently sat on at the moment, very carefully so we can put it back exactly where it was when it started. So we can then install the bridge underneath this, and that's going to take us a little while to do. So if you stick with us, I'll take you through the process and we'll see how it's done. So as explained, the first thing that needs to be done is the track needs to be weathered. For that I'm going to use a can of Humbrol's Match 29 brown spray paint. It's just a base layer of weathering to start the track weathering process off. Make sure the sleepers are recoloured and the sides of rails are redone as well. So I'm going to use a basic piece of paper, just a bit of masking, just to control the overspray and start working around the curve here to weather the track. Having completed the track weathering, the next step is going to be to dismantle this part of the layout and take the track bed out so we can start feeding the new bridge underneath. So as you can see, we've now got to the point where this track bed here is now loose, which means we can start sliding the bridge sections underneath it. It hasn't gone quite as smooth as I was hoping. I was hoping what I'd be able to do is just undo the screws on this side down below the baseboard and over there, and just lift the whole section out. But I'd forgotten how I built this originally because it's a little while since I put this all together. So the supports are all glued in place underneath the bridge here at both ends, but that's meant that I've had to unpin the track and find the screws that hold the extra bits of support along the length of the bridge, so we can take those out. What I can do now though is I can take out both supports, which one of them's handily just fallen over as well, and then we can start inserting the bridge sections underneath this deck. So the deck will stay as it was before, bridge goes underneath, and then we can start, hopefully soon after that, doing the landscaping. At least once I've fixed the track again anyway. So bear with me, we'll get this bridge put into place. So the new bridge deck comes in 3 parts. I'm going to start with this longest section first, and literally all I'm going to do is I'm just going to lift up this track bed, slide the bridge underneath, and work it round till it slots into place, which is just there hopefully. And then now I've done that bit, we can move on to the next section, which is a much shorter piece, but it's still going to go and slot into place. For now it looks like I'm going to have to do a bit of trimming on the edge of the bridge deck here to get it to slot into place. So it's a little bit too tight there, so we'll come back to that. And then finally we've got the last piece. Let's see how that fits in as well. So that piece is going to fit in really nice and easily, just like that. So once we've got this final section in here, just fit into that gap there, I'm just going to have to modify the edge of the baseboard structure here by the look of it. I'll have to slot that in, and we'll have our bridge fully in place and ready for the next stage. I've worked my way along the edges of the track bed here, just shaping it down very carefully to take away the edges, just thin it down where we need it to fit through this bridge here. And now a position where actually we can drop both these final sections of the bridge in and see the whole thing now for the first time as it's actually going to look when it's in and finished. So as I did before, I'm just going to lift the deck up, drop that first section in. It's still quite a tight fit, but it does fit. Put that up to the first section, so that's in place. Then same process again, just going to lift the track bed, drop this section in here, line it up with the previous one, bit of adjustment along the way. And once I've got all these pieces lined up properly, like so, get everything nudged into position, then our track bed all fits where it used to do, and our bridge scene is really starting to come together already. So at that you can see now we've got the bridge decks now fully in place. We've got quite a bit of work to do to blend this in. So all these edges where you see all the deep trough along here, we'll be able to sort all that out with a bit of ballast and some other material in there as well. So we'll fill all that up first with probably some cork, and then after that we can ballast on top, and we'll start seeing this whole scene really come together. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to rejoin all these tracks, set them back into place where they were originally. Then we can test it, make sure it's working properly, and after that then it's on to the start of scenic work. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm really pleased with the progress so far in this section and how it's coming together. So we've now got the tracks all laid and tested as well. So I've tested to make sure that the rolling stock goes across the baseboard joint here, which is a really important point to get right. I don't want things falling off the track as they go through this baseboard joint, and particularly with it being on a curve as well, it makes it a little bit more tricky as well. Everything fits, which I think is amazing. I think Paul's done a brilliant job on this bridge, particularly since it's built completely off-site in a different part of the country. He's seen the layout, but he's not been near it to measure it up or anything. This was done from a template. So we've got all the bridge in place, fitting as we wanted it to do, and the track bed's in place as well. So I'm now at a place where actually what I want to do next is I want to clean up the track railheads, get some trains running, and ensure that actually all our clearances are correct from the walls as well on this. If I need to at this point, I can adjust some of the track layout to compensate for that, but I need to know now, not want to start doing ballasting and finishing everything off around it as well. This is obviously the first stage of quite a lot of scenic work now. So the next stage is, after we've finished checking all this works, is to build up the landscape around the bridge. So we've got to reach the same height as the ground cover over there, do the same on the other side of the bridge. We've got a landscape up to this level as well, to this part of the baseboards, and same on both sides of the bridge here as well. And then probably the biggest single job is actually pouring the resin for the water as well. So we'll be using Woodland Scenic's realistic water for this. And what that means is actually it's going to be a multiple day process to actually build up the depth of the water we want. Because we've got to keep pouring extra thin layers, or additional rather thin layers on top of one another with the realistic water to achieve the depth that we want. If you try and pour it all in one, A, it will take forever to cure, and B, I've found actually from past experience that just by doing it in one pour doesn't really get you the final effect that you want from the water. So doing it in lots of thin layers builds up the depth gradually over a period of days, and we'll get a really good looking reservoir then as well. Plus we've got also a weir to consider as well, because there's a weir that comes over the edge here and runs through this central bridge, coming through this part here, where the two levels of the reservoir are slightly different. Again, a bit of modeller's license, so this won't be an exact replica of that, but it will give that difference of height as well. And then the rest of the ground cover to go around that. So one or two things to do. So I'm going to go and get cracking, get the track rubber out, clean these railheads, get some trains running, and then we can move forward from there. I've satisfied myself now that the trains will run as I want them to through the curves on the viaduct. I've actually tested the outer curve with our longest coaches, which are Mark 4s and Mark 3s, so 75-foot long coaches. They all run through the bridge, miss all the bridge size perfectly, which is great. And I made a little adjustment as well to the position of the bridge as well, just to even up the exit here, because we had a little bit of an uneven position at the exit of the bridge on that side. All that in place, I'm happy with all that. So now it's time to start working through some polystyrene blocks to start building up the landform. I'm going to start in this corner here, and we'll get all this built up so we've got a nice fall down to the reservoir here. So the reservoir for me is going to kind of do a bit of that kind of shape, so it'll spread out across through this scene. So my first port of call really is to start cutting these polystyrene blocks down to make them fit the space available. I'm going to start with, well, the one that's at the bottom, then we'll start with the one on the top. Then once I've got them all roughly the shape, then I'll glue them all in place with some PVA glue. Then they can all set. Then we can overlay them with some plaster bandage. Then we'll have a nice hard shell landscape over which we can paint and then start adding the ground cover as well. So without further ado, I'm going to pick up my trusty craft knife and start carving away to shape these blocks to fit the space. Off we go. So we've now done the basic shaping with the craft knife to get the chunks of polystyrene to the right kind of overall shape and size. But now I need to do the detailed final cutting as well. So for that process, I'm going to use a hot wire foam cutter. And it's going to cut through the foam nice and easily. I'll be able to shape things to be the right kind of shape for a landscape as well. Because at the moment, as you can see, it's a little bit blocky. So like I said before, I haven't actually glued all this together yet. I'm going to do this cutting before we've glued it, so then we can join it all together, get it plaster bandaged at the same time, and be able to motor through this process of getting the landscape done. So off we go, foam cutter to the rescue to finish this off. I've now got a basic landform here, which is ready to be glued together with PVA glue. And then after that, we can move on to the next stage, which is the fun, messy bit of adding plaster bandage over the top of this as well. Now, so I've got to be really careful working around this really nicely built viaduct as well. So what we're going to do is, rather than soaking it before I put it onto the layout, I'm going to cut the pieces to shape, position them on top of the landscape, then wet them with a water mister so I can really control where that water goes and how wet the plaster gets as well. We can make sure that's all set then by the end of hopefully tonight, and then we can move on to the next stage, ready for tomorrow. As you can see, we've made a fair bit of progress since where we left off. We've gone from a bare plaster bandage white covering over the landscape to one that's actually all painted brown using a Daler Rowney poster paint. And that means we've now got a base landscape on which we can start adding those important ground cover textures and colours. Now, the first thing we're going to do on top of that is going to add the ballast around the railway. So I've cut away the cork down the centre of the two running lines, and I've prepared a standard mix that I've used across the rest of the layout of both medium and fine grade Woodland Scenics blended grey ballasts. They're mixed together in this tub, and they're ready to apply by hand onto the railway and to be brushed into place to create that realistic ballast effect which we have on the rest of the layout as well. So we're going to take a closer look, get moving with that, and get this final section of track ballasted. So I've already mixed the two ballasts together in a tub, and we're literally going to put those onto the track bed now, pinch by pinch. And it's a little bit of a labour-intensive, time-consuming process, but actually quite therapeutic as well. Now, one of the things I've got to work around on this is I've actually got to put quite a lot of ballast down the sides here, just to build up the edges. I was going to look at doing an alternative method on this, but it's become quicker and easier to do it all with ballast. So that'll give us a nice shoulder down the edge of the track bed as well. So normally what I do is I work down the centre of a piece of track and then add the ballast either side as well. And the aim is not to put too much on at once, because the less you put on, the less you've got to adjust into place later. So I've just completed a short length of the ballast in here. And what I'm going to do is use this brush, use the side of the brush, and just gently sweep across the top of the sleepers. And that's going to move all the excess ballast along the track bed and out of the way. And the aim here is at the end is that we have ballast neatly set in between all the sleepers and a realistic looking railway. You can see within a few minutes there we've got to the point of having some realistic looking ballast now straight away. I've just got the rest of this 4-foot baseboard to do. So I'll get on with that and maybe you could have a cup of tea or something. It'll take me a few minutes. So as you can see, we've got the loose ballast all in place, and the important thing now is actually to fix it down so it can't move. Particularly with this being a portable layout, we don't want to be picking the baseboard up and tipping all the ballast all over the floor every time we move it. So to do that, we're going to use a different type of adhesive. We're going to use an SBR adhesive, which is a much thinner version of a PVA. It's a bit more flexible as well, and it works in basically the same kind of way. So what we'll do is we'll wet the ballast first with water from a water mister, and that just allows water to soak into the ballast and helps the glue flow into that ballast a bit better as well. And then using a small syringe, I'm going to pick up a small quantity of glue at a time and then feed that in between the sleepers to start with so it flows out to fix the track and the ballast into place. So like we did before, it's going to take a few minutes to get all this done, but it's a very simple process. Like I say, you just start spraying the water over the ballast, just do a small area at a time. Then picking up the adhesive in a syringe, start working our way along and letting the glue flow into the ballast. Next on the agenda for this scene is a base layer of ground cover. So this is just going to be a simple blended green turfs colour from Woodland Scenics, which is going to be laid over all the grassed areas as a base layer. That will just give us a bit of depth when we add the static grass on top of it. Really simple, layer of PVA, brush straight onto the scene, grass over the top of it, leave it to dry overnight, brush off the excess, save it for the next project, and then we can add on the first layers of static grass after that. So I've already got my water, I've got PVA glue, I've got a brush, I've got some blended green turf. So here we go. So that the first layer of ground cover is now down on the layout, so over the grassed areas on it. And I've added a bit more colour and depth to the base underneath where the water is going to go as well, so that kind of murky tone underneath the water. But the next stage we need to do now is start adding the first layers of static grasses on top of this fine turf layer. So to do that I'm going to use a watered down PVA glue, so it's about an 80-20 mix, 20% water to 80% PVA. Simply going to brush that on over the top of the fine blended turf which is on here. Then using the Nock Grassmaster, I'm going to apply static grasses from both the Green Scene and the Woodland Scenics range all mixed in here over the top of that. And that'll give us our first layer of proper detailed ground cover. After that, we can start pouring water, and after that we'll add more layers of ground cover as well to really bring this all to life. So I'm going to paste on my glue, break out the static grass and get this looking a bit more realistic. As you can see, I've been busy since we last saw the layout, so it's had to go away for a couple of days to work through the process of adding all the water into it. So we used the Woodland Scenics Realistic Water product on this. It's quite a sizable baseboard for the reservoir scene, and it's gone through quite a sizable amount of realistic water. There are 3 full bottles of it on here, plus a half spare bottle as well. And actually, if I'm honest, I think it could do with another one, just to add a little bit more depth and really finish it off. I think the nice thing about this water effect though is actually it does have quite a nice kind of sheen to it when it's finished. Not the most wallet friendly way of doing it, it is not the cheapest products at the end of the day, but it does look the part when it's finished. After I'd added the water, I also added around the edges, I added some reeds in as well, using some spare materials I found from Woodland Scenics again, some of their long grasses. They've been cut into short bits and then plugged into the edge of the water. I think looking at it now, I probably want to go around with a pair of scissors and just trim the tops of those in a few places as well, just to tidy them up. Having done that then, I then moved on again, more work in the background, to add more texture to the ground cover as well. And I finished most of the ground cover to the sort of same sort of standard at the moment. So it's got 2 to 3 layers of static grass on it, which have been applied with spray paint over the top. So I use a matte varnish to attach that. And what I do is I work over a small patch at a time with the matte varnish, spray that onto the layout, then add the static grass on top, spray on top of that, and keep building that up in layers so you get a really nice dense effect to the grass work. On top of that, in some places there's some fine turf, in other places some coarse turf as well, and just for that little fleck of colour as well, I've used some of the Woodland Scenics pollen colours as well. I just add a little bit of a hint of colour to the landscape as well. Not too much of that though, because I think you could go too far with that as well. And then, well, we're now at a point where actually I've just got this final corner here to finish off now with that ground cover. And then I've got one more job after that, which is to finish off adding in those little finishing, flourishing touches like the, I've got some fine leaf foliage, which I'm going to use to really set in the viaduct onto the piers around it, onto the landscape around it as well. And to finish off some of the rather steeper bits of the embankment as well. Because there's some areas there where the grass wouldn't grow very well. So a bit of PVA, bit of fine leaf foliage, then we'll have a scene that's really looking quite complete. And then, well, if time allows, because we are on deadline to get this done for the Great Electric Train Show, we'll add a little bit of weathering over the top of the new ballast here as well. So that's now brought us to the end of the Great Central Railway modelling series for this layout. We've finally completed that last board back in the corner behind me for the representation of Swithland Reservoir. I say completed, but I wouldn't say this is ever a finished layout. I think like everyone else's layouts, they've always got a list of things we'd like to do to a model railway. And just glancing around this layout, I'm already looking at things going, actually, I quite like the idea of having a depot scene here, which you'd use more for video rather than a realistic addition to the layout. But if they're doing things like startups, locomotive movements, things like that, could put another track in, a little depot building as well. I'd like to add a bit more depth to the ground cover around this area as well, to just lift it a little bit from being what currently seems like quite a flat board. And I think also either in the reservoir area, which we've just completed, there's still more detail that could be added there, things like some wildlife in the reservoir, a bit more bushes and trees around it as well. But for the time being though, it's looking pretty good, I think. I think it's giving that sense of place at least. And then if actually we look over to the other side of the layout, there's also the platform area I'd like to give some attention to as well. I'd actually like to sand down all the platform tops and make them nice and smooth and give them a new paint finish as well. So whilst it's complete, there's still a big job list of things that I'd like to do to this layout as well. The reservoir scene though, actually I've really enjoyed doing that. I think Paul Chapman's done a fantastic job of building the actual reservoir bridge for us as well, especially considering it goes around a curve. There's a little bit of it where the track's not a perfect alignment with the bridge shape, but that's on me, I think, really, rather than Paul at the end of the day. But overall, it's given that sense of place again, which is what we're after from this layout. We weren't after a real exact nut and bolt replica of the Great Central Railway. You'd never be able to do that in a 16-foot by 8-foot footprint like this. But what we have got is a representation of that railway in double O gauge. From all of us here that have been part of bringing this series to you, we hope you enjoyed this latest and final part on the layout. And do keep watching. You never know, we may have something else more on the Great Central layout in the future. Thank you once again, and we look forward to seeing you around at the shows with our Great Central layout. Bye for now.